everybody, welcome back to another Thursday Tips and Tricks. We're going to talk today about learning how to tuckerize the third basic unit that's in our Tucker Trimmer set of instructions. And it's a unit that we call a combination unit. And of course, we're going to help you learn how to recognize those units, how to analyze what size they need to be and how they're constructed, and also then how you can tuckerize or make those units oversized so you get to trim them down, creating better blocks that are going to give you your better quilts. Now, to do this, I need to get behind the camera so we can take a look at our horizontal surface. And one of the first things you should realize is that they're not always called combination unit. It depends on who is writing your instruction. Basically, it's a square that is divided with a common diagonal and a partial diagonal. And some pattern writers call it a triple tri-square. Some pattern writers call it a Y block. We call it a combination unit. To me, it's a combination of two quarter square triangles and a half square triangle that are used to create the different blocks. Now, let's get started with how you build those. Our directions, as well as most pattern directions, will have you building these in the same manner, where you start with squares, you create half square triangles, take one of the half square triangles, untrimmed, you don't do anything there, but you layer it on top of a plain square, mark stitching lines, stitch on the lines, and when you cut it apart and press it, you end up with those combination units. And that's how most pattern writers tell you to do it. Sometimes they'll have you cut individual squares, but most instructions follow this method. Let's take a look at a pattern. This pattern, when I was breezing through the magazine, I saw that yes, indeed, there are combination units in there. What I need to do to be able to tuckerize those is to figure out what size the units need to be and also check the size of the starting squares that they're recommending. So when I look right above the diagram for the combination units, I see each unit should be 2.5 inches square, including the seam allowances. So that's the important information. If it's unfinished, including the seam allowance to 2.5 inches, then the finished size will be 2 inches. That's when I open up my Tucker Trimmer set of instructions, go to the chart, and find those numbers. If the finished size of the unit is 2, the unfinished size, or in my case, I call it the cut size, is 2.5. My starter squares for combination units is 3.5 inches. Now, when I check the size squares that they're telling me to cut, they're telling me to cut 3.25. And that makes sense. They're presuming that I can do all the construction steps perfectly and not make any mistakes. I know better. I like to build that extra 1/4 inch into my project so that I can make them oversized and trim them down. So that's the first project that we're looking at. The next project that we're looking at is also combination units. These combination units are only made with 2 colors, not the normal 3 colors. But when I looked at the sizes, it showed me right away that I'm not going to be able to use my regular Tucker trimmer because they say the blocks should be 8 inches square, including the seam allowances. Now, my Tucker Trimmer 1 only goes up to 6 inches, so that I'm not going to be able to use. What I will be able to use is my Tucker Trimmer 3. When I open those instructions, use what I know. I know that the blocks will be 8 inches square, including the seam allowance. That's the cut size. The finished size would be 7.5. The size blocks that I'll need to cut for my combination units to make them, to tuckerize them, are 9 inches. And that's I'm sure correct, because when I look at the size they're telling me to cut 8 3/4. I'm bumping it up to 9 so that my units are going to be larger and I'm going to be able to trim them down and clean them up. Now, one of the things that happens when you go to create combination units using the method that I described earlier is you'll actually end up creating the units in what I call mirror images. And those mirror images just happen as part of the construction process. Some patterns, this one for these blocks, use those mirror image units to create 2 different types of blocks. Block 1 uses one of the types of units. Block 2 uses the other type of unit. To me, this one seems to be spinning clockwise. This one seems to be spinning counterclockwise. And they use both of those in a project. Sometimes spinning in different directions causes a little bit of chaos in your project, and it's not really a look that you desire. There are ways that you can change those things, and I'll discuss that toward the end of the video. But sometimes you're going to open or find a block that only wants you to build quilt blocks with one of the mirror image units. And that's what happened when I looked at this one. And here's what they're telling me to do to construct this. To build those half square triangle squares, take a plain square, draw a diagonal, stitch on the true diagonal, take the part that I've stitched on and use that as my combination unit, but then discard that other half of the fabric that I've cut. That doesn't make sense to me. What I would do if I'm using this or wanted to create this project with non-mirror image combination units, what I would do is pull out my technique sheet to this effect. This is our solution to creating those combination units, always with the same orientation of colors, so that I don't have that much waste going into my trash can if I wanted to go ahead and build this project. So that non-mirror image combination unit technique sheet has a full online video that you can watch to see how we do that. Now let's take a look at a couple of projects that I've created using combination units. When you look at this, what you're going to see is that the mirror image combination units are the perfect choice to create this block. It's from my Oak Ridge Star pattern, and large combination units, small combination units, but the mirror images create the look of a square in between my two star points. It's great. I liked it, and that's why I designed that project called Oak Ridge Star. When I look at this next block, you've seen this before. This is a block that we've been working on over the last couple of weeks that we've been tuckerizing, and we've been talking about the half square triangles and the hourglass quarter square triangles. This block, from my solitaire pattern, the north, the south, the east, and the west have combination units. And me being me, I wanted all of my blocks to be exactly the same from one to the next, which meant that the mirror image combination units that I created when I built the units wasn't going to be able to be used to create blocks that maintained the same spin. So what I did with those extra mirror image combination units was take those units and put them edge to edge to edge, and I built a fantastic border that I was able to add around the center of the quilt, and it happened automatically. When I built the blocks, I was building the pieces for the border. So that's just two examples. We're going to go back and take a look at the quilts that were behind me when I started. These are just several of the patterns that we've created. Some of these patterns are the whole focus of the project is combination units. Some of them just have them in the border. But before we go over to the quilts, I want to make two book recommendations. This first book is called Fun with One Blocks and was written by Cheryl Malkowski. Every project in that book uses combination units. Sometimes mirror image, sometimes the non-mirror image, but it's a great book to add to your library. And there's another book written by Pat Speth called Nickel Quilts and Borders. And I loved, sorry about bumping that camera, gang. I loved what Pat shows on her pages for different border variations that you can create with that one simple combination unit, sometimes mirror image, sometimes not, sometimes with an extra pop on the corners, and sometimes not. But it's just a fun unit to have in your bag of tricks. Now, before we leave, I'm going to talk to you about the quilts that we're seeing over here. And take a look. That quilt that's on the far right is my solitaire. We just talked about that one. And what you see there is half of the units are used on the interior, the other half are used on the border. This is my Oak Ridge Star, and we use the mirror image combination units to create the block, but I also use them in the setting and sashing pieces. This is my spinning pinwheels, and I figured out a way to use all of the combination units. I made them in mirror images, but I made blocks that sometimes have a light background and sometimes have a colored background, and all of that information is in the pattern also. This is an example where the combination units weren't used in the interior. This is my New Year's star pattern, but I added the combination units for the border. One like pair of combination units, one of the pairs ended up on the sides of the quilt. The mirror images ended up on the top and bottom of the quilt. This is another example of using that combination unit for a border. I used the mirror images, but what I did with this one was I kept the two squares that I used for the quarter square triangles consistent in all the shapes. So it always had a light and it always had a black, and then I used lots of different reds when I added those half square triangle pieces to create yet a different look with those combination units. This one, you might not even recognize that there are combination units in it. If you look at this block here, it is indeed a combination unit. It was constructed, it was trimmed, and then what we did was we put a second trim and added another color to it, a pop of color using our Corner Pop 3. This is called Bougainvillea, and it's a really nice modern look for the combination units, two different sizes, and the combination units in this are indeed non-mirror image so that they all spin in the same direction. And oldie but goodie is my twister block. Again, same kind of idea where you make the combination unit, add a pop, this is just a simple corner pop to the one corner of it, giving me more pinwheels going on here. Half of the units became the blocks, the other half of the units became the border. So if you can't tell, I love this unit. It's going to be good for you to learn to recognize it when you're looking through your future projects. Analyze what those instructions are telling you to do, and then tuckerize those units so you can make them slightly bigger, trim them down, and build your very best quilts ever. Now, that's it for today. Couple reminders: if you want to see videos on combination units and the non-mirror combination units, visit our website or join our YouTube channel. And join me again in 2 weeks when I am going to do one more lesson for a tuckerizing unit using the Tucker trimmer tool that we call a shaded 4-patch. So I'll see you in a couple weeks. Take care, everybody.